Raise your hand if you ever had a dream that was so important to you that you worked tirelessly day and night until it became the very essence of your existence. Now imagine that on the day that it was to come to fruition, the rug was ripped out from under you. And instead of jumping for joy and claiming victory, you were on bended knee crying and questioning whether or not to give up. Contest chair, ladies and gentlemen, that is the exact situation that my wife and I endured. And from that situation, my little success story was born. Literally. November 24th, 2004, my wife and I went on our first date. And fellas, trust me, remember that first date. And on that first date, she shared with me that if our relationship developed, we wouldn't be able to have children biologically. And if I wanted to leave, she absolutely understood. She seemed like such an amazing woman that I told her it wasn't a concern for me. It didn't hurt that she was, and still is to this day, the most beautiful woman I've ever laid my eyes on. Late 2007, the reality kicked in that we were going to get married. So we started talking about adopting a child. So we both had no idea what to do. So we got married, we bypassed the huge wedding and honeymoon, and we immediately hired an adoption attorney. And what do you do when you're trying to adopt a child? You create a website and you create an adoption book. These are the two essential things when you're trying to adopt a child. Over the next 5 years, we got close a few times. 2 weeks away at one point, but nothing ever panned out. Then, early March of 2013, a woman contacted us who lived in Washington, D.C., and told us that she wanted us to adopt her child upon birth in mid-June. We spoke to her several times a week for hours on end. We started to get excited. Things were working out exactly how we planned. We started doing all the things that you do when you have a newborn child. We were buying the crib, the diapers, the wipes, the pacifiers, the onesies. Any parents here tonight? You guys know the drill. And if you're not a parent, that's the drill. About a month later, she called us and told us that the baby was born 2 months premature. She had a large heart murmur, and she was in the ICU unit attached to machines keeping her alive. She sent us pictures of the baby and even put the phone next to the baby so we could hear the baby breathing. As we were trying to bond with the baby, speaking to her, we were calling her by the name that we had chosen, Emily. We planned our trip to DC immediately, but we had no contact with her for about 2 days, and something in our guts didn't feel right. Our attorney reached out to a friend of hers to check out the situation in DC. And with a heavy heart and compassion in her voice, she informed us that not only was a woman not in the hospital, but a baby had not been born on that day. And certainly not a baby with those complications. Gut-wrenching? Yeah. We cried for weeks on end and pondered, again, whether or not to give up. Besides myself, who here is a believer that things happen for a reason?
Yeah.
About 2 months later, our attorney reached out to us out of the blue. And she told us there was a situation, a young woman in the Bronx was pregnant and wanted a family to adopt her child upon birth. She loved our adoption book and loved our website. And she had already narrowed it down to my family and another family. However, she was leaning towards the other family. We were cautiously optimistic, but at this point we started thinking, maybe it's just not in the cards for us. About a week later, our attorney called us again and said that due to an unforeseen circumstance, the other family decided not to move forward. And if we wanted, the young woman would love to meet with us to discuss the situation. My wife and I looked at each other and said, what do we have to lose? We agreed. We met for lunch with her and her parents. At that lunch, she shared with us that both she and her twin brother were adopted, and the parents sitting there were her adoptive parents. Then after a wonderful lunch, and we were getting ready to leave, she told us that she wanted us to be the parents of her child and start the adoption process. My wife and I walked out of the restaurant confused. We got in our truck and we looked at each other and said, did that really just happen? Again we cried, but this time it was happy tears. On Veterans Day, November 11, 2013, our son Parker was born in the Bronx. And yes, obviously, he's a Yankees fan. Is there another team that plays in New York? 2 days later, we had to wait for clearances from New York to go through. We stayed in my childhood home with my dad. Talk about surreal. I got to stay in the bedroom that I grew up in with my wife and newborn son. And I stress the word stay, because that first night, sleep was not an option. I watched every single breath he took to make sure that he was still alive and breathing. New parents tend to do crazy things like that. Am I right? That first night, when I put Parker to sleep, I whispered in his ear, "You're my little success story." Parker's now 4. And I still, to this day, every night, when I put him to sleep, because he wants me to put him to sleep, I tell him, "You're my little success story." The only difference is now, he tells me, I ask him, "What are you?" And he says, with a big smile, "Your little success story." Contest chair, ladies and gentlemen. Understand that when you have a dream, things are going to get tough. You're going to lose faith, and you're going to want to quit. But I stress to you, don't quit. Fight for your dreams. And please, remember this story. Now you know my little success story, so I ask all of you, what is your little success story? Contest chair.